the Radio Forest Podcast.
Gary Numan, welcome.
Thank you. How are you?
Doing really good. Hey, Intruder entered the UK album chart at number 2, and that's your second album in a row to hit the charts. How does that feel? I mean, this is your 21st album.
Yeah, no, it feels great. Thank you. It's really good. It's lovely to be back at that sort of level. In the latter stages of the career. My career started really well. Everything went great at the beginning, and then it just fell away pretty badly, and it fell away for quite some time. And it's taken me a very long time to slowly start to bring myself up to a more respectable level. And I'm very grateful, and I do appreciate it very, very much. And it feels amazing, I have to say.
So did you change the music to figure out what was working, or did the audience kind of catch up to where you were going, or did you arrive at a place that worked for both?
Well, what happened was, actually, when things were going badly back in the 80s, I did start to panic a little bit, and I started to listen to advice, and I was trying to write songs to keep an A&R man happy, keep the label happy, keep different opinions happy, and you sort of lose sight of what you want to do, and so that I think by '92 the music wasn't very good, and I was a bit lost really, and so I actually took some time out and had a real think about whether I wanted to still do it and why, what did I want to do. I met my wife, who exposed me to some very different kinds of music, was very inspiring, still with all these years later, and I just went back to making music for a hobby again in '94. When I did that, it was much heavier, much darker, much more interesting. It was before I stopped listening to advice, just did my own thing again, the way I had done when I first started. And that's where I am now. I'm still doing much the same thing. So for me, everything started to go much better around about 94. And I found the style of music that I loved, and I just tried to get better at it. And that's pretty much where I still am, and every album has done a little bit better than the one before. From 94 onwards, I've loved it. I've loved being a part of it. It's not been easy. There's been some very difficult moments still, but I just love being a part of it. And I can't honestly say that was true for sort of the late 80s and early 90s. I really wasn't enjoying it that much.
Was one of the artists that your wife introduced you to, I had heard it was Pretty Hate Machine, and more specifically Head Like a Hole by Trent Reznor and 9 Inch Nails. Is that true? Did she first play that for you?
Yeah, first time I ever heard that. She was playing some 9 Inch Nails stuff upstairs in the house, and I'd never heard Head Like a Hole before. And I heard that chorus come in, and I just thought, oh my God. I remember the day, flying up the stairs and running to the room saying, what is that? What is that? That is amazing. So yeah, it was massively important to me. And then she played me Songs of Faith and Devotion by Depeche Mode. And in particular, that song, Walking in My Shoes. It was that sort of thing. She just exposed me to a whole mass of things, not just 9 Inch Nails and the more recent Depeche Mode stuff, which for some reason I hadn't heard. I can't imagine why, because it was so popular. But many other things as well. And it just opened my eyes up, my ears up, I should say, to a much heavier, darker kind of music. And it was so massively inspiring. And I just headed that way.
Well, let me ask you another question about 9 Inch Nails. And more specifically, I want to talk about two versions of Cars that I'm a pretty big fan of. One, there's a live video of you in London in 2009 with 9 Inch Nails. And I don't know what it is that makes me like it so much. Trent looks like he's really into it. You're really into it. I didn't know Trent Reznor could play the tambourine so well. But it's very, very smooth. So did you guys just hop on stage and do it? Or my question is, were you really comfortable at that point because you guys had practiced that a couple of times?
No, we just did the sound check in the afternoon. That was it.
No way. You're kidding me.
No. Well, I'd heard, actually my wife had heard that Trent was doing another song of mine called Metal on that tour, which he'd done a cover version of before. And she wrote to him behind my back, I didn't even know she'd done it, and said, I was actually diagnosed with depression at the time. I was in a really bad way. And she wanted to try to do something that would help me and sort of pick me up. And so she wrote to Trent and said, wouldn't it be a great idea if Gary come on stage and did Metal with you when you did London? And he wrote back to her, and like I say, I knew none of this was going on, and so they set it up sort of sneakily between them. So I turn up at the show that afternoon, because I'd been told that he wanted to do Metal with me, so I went along to do that and did a sound check. And while I was there, he said, hey, we do Cars as well. I almost argued with him. I said, there's no way. There's no way your fans are going to want to hear 2 of my songs. They're going to hate me. And he said, no, it'd be great. It'd be really cool. So we did it. But I think we ran it through a couple of times during the sound check. So we did it maybe twice so I could, figure out what their arrangement of it, because it's slightly different to mine. But that was it. And then I was so nervous, man, I can't tell you.
Wow.
He did this amazing introduction, and he talked about those songs and the album it came from, and how important it was for when he was putting Nine Inch Nails together and evolving the sound of Nine Inch Nails. And I didn't really know any of that, and so I'm standing on the side of the stage, sort of terrified that everyone's going to hate me, and yet he was just saying all these amazing things, and it was such a fantastic experience. I was so grateful to him for doing that, and he really did. It really helped me with the other things that I was going through as well.
Now, the second one I wanted to ask you about is your appearance in the song and the video for Fear Factory's cover of Cars. How did that come together? Did you hear it and say, yeah, I'm in? Because you got to get requests from different bands all the time and people that want a little piece of your time or your picture or you in a video. So how did you end up in the video and on the song with Fear Factory?
Well, a friend of mine was a journalist, and he was sort of going out and interviewing various bands along the way, and he noticed that my name was being mentioned more and more as an influence on the different people that he was talking to. He would ask them who they listened to and blah, blah, blah. My name kept coming up. And with Fear Factory, the same thing happened. And he mentioned to them, I think, that he knew me, and that was where the connection came from. So they got in touch through him and said, would you sing on the record with us? And it was amazing. They flew me over to Vancouver, did the song there. And I've done it like a million times.
Yeah.
It took me about two minutes, and then sang it. That was it. So it's a long way for 10 minutes of work. Went back to Britain again. But I loved the band. I got on really well with them. And then a short time later, they said they're going to make a video for it. And they flew me back out to Vancouver to make the video. So it was just great. Became really good friends with the band. And I went on stage with them when they played in London next. Just love them, and I thought their version was great. I really liked it.
You're back in the U.S., and I heard you actually might be neighbors with Trent Reznor. But my question more is, how do you feel as an American now that the U.S. is back in the Paris Accord? How does that make you feel with the themes of Intruder and kind of some of the, I don't want to call them fears, but kind of the things that you've been dealing with in your music and in your life? How do you feel about us being back in the Paris Accord?
Yeah, massively relieved. I was horrified when we were pulled out of it. I just thought that was totally the wrong thing to be doing. So yeah, very, very relieved. I'm going to feel more confident about things when, at the moment, there seems to be an awful lot of obstacles put in the way of any kind of meaningful efforts to do what's necessary, to fight climate change. And that's frustrating and that's disappointing. And it obviously slows everything down, and every measure that's put in place is kind of watered down a little bit because there are still so many people that refuse to believe it's real. Either they genuinely don't believe it or they're mirroring what their constituents say. I'm not sure. It was very frustrating for a few years, but now I'm a little bit more optimistic about the way things are going. But it just requires fundamental change. It still feels to me as if we're just chipping away at the edges a little bit rather than hitting the problem, smack in the middle where it needs to be hit.
I know you've got 3 daughters, so you're surrounded in a household of women. If you identify as an atheist, what do you tell your kids as they start to ask questions and have friends that are religious or not religious? I'm worried about putting my kids into a category because that's where I want them to go. And so I'm struggling with now is I don't know how to answer those questions. So did you have those conversations with your daughters? Are they going through that now?
Well, I don't want to give them their opinions. So all I do is that if they ask me a question about something, I tell them how I feel about it. And I certainly don't try to bully them into any thoughts of their own. I want them to have their own thoughts and have their own ideas about the future, be it religion or climate change or whatever. They certainly got people at school that think differently to the way I think. But I'm happy for them to come up with their own opinions. I don't want them to be little reflections of me or what I don't want them to mirror what I think just because I say so. I want them to be individuals. I want them to have their own thoughts about these things. And as long as I can see them researching these things properly, not just going on YouTube, looking at one particular opinion and then that becomes gospel as far as they're concerned, I wouldn't be too impressed with that. But, if they go out and get a wider range of opinions and come up with their own ideas about things, then I will respect that.
Gary Numan, new album, Intruder, hit the UK album chart at number 2. His 21st album, I believe 2 of your daughters are on the album too, is that correct?
Yeah, Persia and Raven, my middle and oldest ones, sing on the album. But the youngest one, Echo, wrote the poem that the whole idea comes from. The whole idea of the album came from a poem that she wrote called Earth. And so her poem is written on the album and on the artwork as well. So they're all involved in it quite heavily.
And also, actually, I forgot to mention this. We're here in Boise right now. You'll be here at the Knitting Factory October 16th. So looking forward to see you back in Boise, Idaho, and Intruder out now. Gary Numan, thanks for the phone call today.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much.